is this a storm in a teacup in a way, at least a boil that has been lanced very quickly and now it will all be over?
Firstly, good morning. Good morning to your viewers. I'm not so sure, because it might be that reading between the lines, there's a little bit more to come out about this. But I think a lot of people, and not just former MPs, but also many Conservative voters and people who voted Reform as well, I think their sense is that this is a government that just keeps on getting worse. That Labour presented themselves in the election, and indeed in the run-up, as a party of moral probity. Since then, we found out that Sir Keir Starmer himself has taken more goodies and freebies by far than any other politician. And he's known about this fraud conviction for Louise Haigh. And every time she went on the media attacking the Tories, which she did relentlessly, she was hiding her own previous convictions. And I know they're spent, so technically she doesn't have to declare them. But that's not really the point. As Keir Starmer said, you can't be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker, and yet his party seems to have them.
Do you think this takes the government now? I mean, it already has so much on its plate, doesn't it, with protests after winter fuel, the backlash with all of that, and inheritance tax for farmers. And now the first resignation in the cabinet in just 5 short months.
Yeah, no, it's pretty dire. And the list of things they're getting into trouble over, most of this is absolutely self-inflicted. Taking away winter fuel payments, an act of cruelty that's going to put 100,000 pensioners in real poverty and hardship this winter, which is despicable. Their dishonesty over their tax plans, which I'm afraid to say that we should have been much harder on the media and us and Conservatives ourselves. We should have got more evidence and honesty from the Labour government, because we now see that their tax plans, which were in their manifesto, or what they said in their manifesto, has been very different from reality. We've got the issue over Rachel Reeves' claims about her own CV. You've got the government talking this country into a recession. You've got the Chagos Islands issue, and I think that's going to continue bubbling, because I think we're going to see that there was a lot of Russian stirring behind that potentially. You've got, as you say yourself, the IHT, the inheritance tax with farmers as well. So there's an awful lot going on, but most of this is absolutely self-induced. And when they took over, we had the fastest growing economy in the G7. We're now almost in recession.
What are we to do about it, though? Because I mean, there's no way, obviously, that there's going to be such of a meltdown that a general election is needed. It's not going to reach that point. So do we all just have to be desperately unhappy with what is going on, or can they pull it together?
Okay, that's a really good point. There was a great piece, I think, in one of the papers by Fraser Nelson, the former editor of The Spectator. And Fraser said that the two things this government has got is time and a massive whacking majority. They've also got unity, so 3 things still. And he said they need to change direction fast, and actually get people back in work, deal with the DWP, deal with the significant rising numbers in worklessness. These are real moral as well as economic issues. That's what the government should be doing. It should be tightening up on immigration massively, and the figures yesterday were dreadful. So there is so much to do. Do I think this government is going to do it? No, because I'm afraid to say they haven't learnt the lessons of the election, and they believe that the election was absolutely, a rejection of the Conservative Party, but it was not a rejection of conservatism. We lost our vote because people didn't think we were delivering. And we've now got a government that is on the economy, on immigration, on ethics, frankly, going massively in the wrong direction. And you're right, I think we're just going to have to stomach it. But I think when elections start happening, when by-elections start happening, when council elections start happening, and Labour's support is hitting 20 to 25%, I think you're going to see something close to panic within Labour circles, which is odd, given their massive majority and given they've still got time to turn it around. But it's certainly going to be pretty interesting few months and few years.
Keir Starmer has been quick to appoint Heidi Alexander as the new Transport Secretary, but he'll have questions to answer as to why he appointed Ms Haigh to his cabinet when he knew about her conviction.
Well, with us now to discuss this further is the former Conservative MP, Daniel Kawczynski. Daniel, the question I think that a lot of people are thinking right now is, why did Keir Starmer appoint Louise Haigh to his cabinet when he knew about this conviction?
Well, I think that's an extremely important question, and I'm sure that next week in the House of Commons there will be parliamentarians who are seeking the answer to that. The Prime Minister has a duty and responsibility to ensure that everybody in his cabinet is beyond reproach. But the point I'd like to make is that the Labour Party accused our party, the Conservative government, of being embroiled in sleaze. That was a very damning indictment, and it did great damage to our election prospects. In a very short period of time in this Parliament, there's been the clothes scandal involving Sir Keir, there's been a Labour MP punching somebody, there's been the fake CV, and now this. So I think it's very regrettable that politicians attack one another as being sleazy, because in any organisation or institution, mistakes are made and there are scandals, whether it's the Church of England, whether it's the BBC. And I think we should remonstrate when somebody has made a mistake, but not be so visceral to one another when you're dealing with a large organisation.
Keir Starmer pre-election was always saying, you know, he's going to be tough on people that make any transgressions. Judge me by my actions, not my words. I mean, he has acted fast over this, if we are big. But, you know, judgment has to be questioned on giving Louise the job in the first place. And as you just said, Rachel Reeves lied on her CV and on her LinkedIn profile. Where does this leave Rachel Reeves?
Well, absolutely. But the point about the former Transport Secretary is absolutely critical, because the Prime Minister has been told that there was a police investigation. Now, obviously, if the police decide to refer it to the courts, obviously she was interviewed before, but there was sufficient concern by the police that they referred it to the magistrates. I'm very surprised that the Prime Minister did not want to make that statement at the start of his administration, get it out there into the open, and perhaps she would have remained in the cabinet. They've just tried to brush this under the carpet, and it's the media, I have to say. And it's easier for me to say it now that I'm no longer a member of Parliament. I pay tribute to the media for the role that they play in exposing these flaws.
Well, that's how we earn a living. But looking at this discussion about Louise Haigh and this previous conviction, I've also heard people saying this morning that this is another example potentially of Keir Starmer thinking more as a lawyer and not as a politician, because the conviction is spent and people deserve second chances, as happened a decade ago. Of course, that's the defence that we've heard from many Labour members and supporters. But at the same time, fraud, that sort of allegation and conviction, is quite specific to politics, because people see that sort of behaviour as being... It bars you from several roles further down in your life. Why does Keir Starmer think it might allow you to just go on and be a very senior politician in the cabinet?
Well, of course, she continues to be a member of Parliament, and she will continue to be a member of Parliament. And Sir Keir Starmer said that she has a great career ahead of her. I mean, on the one hand, she's resigned from the cabinet. He's suggesting that after a due period of time, she may be brought back. That's happened to other politicians in the past. But when you have that extraordinarily privileged position, not just as a member of Parliament, one of 650, but when you have that extraordinary, powerful, privileged position of sitting round a cabinet table with just another 21 or 22 people running a country and running a government department, then I'm afraid I don't think that any of these things can be tolerated.
Just finally, one quick question. There was quite clearly someone out to get Louise, who leaked this story to the press. Do you think this illustrates as much infighting and backbiting as the Conservative Party faced?
Well, let's wait and see how we judge the Labour Party over the course of this whole administration. It's too early to tell. And I'm not going to sit here and say this Labour government is riddled with sleaze. It's too early to say that. But I go back to my earlier point. Be careful trying to say that you are whiter than white. It's not just in the United Kingdom, but around the world.
Daniel Kaczynski, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
The revelation about Miss Haigh will no doubt spark further calls for transparency within the cabinet, with the looming question as to whether this is an isolated case or if Labour has more skeletons in its closet.